This is Not Worth Living, a podcast that features creatives interviewing themselves with a preset list of questions. Unlike other podcasts that feel like conversation between friends, this one aims to feel like eavesdropping on a psychiatrist's visit. Today's episode features...
What's up? My name is Xavier Garcia. I'm a writer-editor out of Toronto. I'm here on Not Worth Living to interview myself with a set of questions that Ira prepared beforehand. Shout out Ira. And you're here to eavesdrop on my therapy session. When Ira asked me if I was interested in participating in this podcast, I was immediately down. But it's funny because, I was trying to prepare my answers and try to match, the vibe of the podcast or how I should approach my responses, given that this is meant to feel like eavesdropping on my therapy session. Then it occurred to me that if I'm the one undergoing therapy and you, who's listening, is eavesdropping on my therapy session, does that make Ira Rat my therapist in this scenario? I don't know why that's so funny to me. But anyways, as I'm answering questions and as you're eavesdropping, please feel free to picture Ira sitting across from me, looking at me disapprovingly as I say the things that I do. Anyways, shout out Ira. Let's get this started. First question, what makes you tick? Honestly, this is such a hard question. I had to look up what it even means because I thought when someone says what makes you tick, they mean what keeps you going. But when I looked it up, it turns out what it means is what makes you the way that you are. And that's a crazy question to ask, one that I wasn't even going to answer. But in keeping with the spirit of eavesdropping on my therapy session, I'm going to give it a shot. So what makes you tick? Or I guess, why am I the way that I am? What do people want to hear about this? Do you want to hear about psychological hiccups, about, I don't know, how I'm prone to self-destruction, bouts of depression, how I'm easily bored? Is that what we're talking about? I don't know. If so, why am I those ways? It's probably a mix of external and internal factors. I had a pretty lonely childhood. I also had lonely teenage years, a lot of isolation, both self-imposed and not. Then in my 20s, I kind of got out of my shell, started going out and stuff. But like all repressed Catholics, once that dam breaks, it really breaks. As for internal factors, I don't know. I feel like I have a tendency towards extremes. So when I isolate or retreat into myself, I do so pretty hard. And then when the opposite happens, it's like a rubber band that's been pulled back and just ready to shoot forward. But I don't know. I've calmed down a lot since my 20s. I've been trying to find a way to live within happy mediums. Anyways, no more of this question. I only answered it out of respect to my esteemed therapist, Ira Rat. Shout out Ira. Which, by the way, I'm going to say shout out Ira every time his name comes up, just because I want to remind everyone to picture him as my therapist, because I personally am going to find that really funny. But anyways, next question. Would you open an envelope with your death date? Fuck yeah, I would. I have very little self-control, and that kind of information at my fingertips would be too much. I'd have to know. But I think it's more than that. I think it would be good for me to know, because I have a hard time conceptualizing my own death. I have an easy time conceptualizing other people's death. I know conceptually there will come a time when my parents will no longer be here with me, but I conceptualize that as an absence in my life. They won't be around in my life. And I can wrap my head around that absence, but I can't wrap my head around me being the absence, if that makes sense. I have a joke I say with my friends, which isn't even funny. It's not even really a proper joke. I just say sometimes whenever someone is telling me to be careful or something, but I'm always like, I can't die. I can only be killed in single combat under the light of the half moon. I don't even know why I say it, to be honest. It's so stupid. But also, here's the thing. I kind of believe it. I kind of believe I can't die unless I'm killed in single combat under the light of the half moon. Because like I said, I have a hard time conceptualizing my own death. And the only way for me to do so is through some ridiculous situation. I don't know, maybe that's led to some reckless behavior or reckless living on my part. So I actually think it would be good for me to open up an envelope and see my death day on it. Because if I did that, if I opened up the envelope and it said, date of death, Xavier Garcia dies, I don't know, October 1st, 2060, I feel like that would cement for me the fact that one day I am going to die. And I'd have to appreciate life a little bit more because I'd know exactly when my time runs out. But also how wild would it be if I open the envelope and I have the envelope in my hands and it says date of death, Xavier Garcia dies October whatever, 2060. But then right under it, it goes cause of death, Xavier Garcia killed in single combat under the light of the half moon. How crazy would that be? How wild would that be? I'm not gonna lie, I'd be so amped if I saw that. I'd be so damn excited. I'd probably wake up the next morning and just start training immediately, like Rocky and Rocky 4 or something, pulling logs through snow or punching frozen meat. Because you know what? Even if I know that this person is gonna kill me in single combat, which now I do because the envelope says I will, so that's fate. You know what I mean? That's my destiny. Even if I know that, I still want to put up a good fight. I still want it to be super close. I want it, the other person who kills me is bleeding and breathing hard and worried or thinking to themselves, damn, I might not make this one. But they do. They fully come back. They get a second win and then they get me. They cut me down. But I don't know. I feel like I fought hard, I feel like I gave it my all. Like, I feel like I fought honorably, to be honest, and at least to the best of my ability. So I'm kind of proud of that too. But anyways, next question. When was the first time you remember creating something intentionally? Yeah, so there were probably times before this, but the one time I really remember was probably when I was in grade 3 or 4. I had just finished watching Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, which if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a masterpiece. But anyways, at that point, I'd seen it for like the 10th time, and I was obsessed. And I remember feeling the need to live in that world more. Like, I'd seen it a million times, and I wanted more, and there was no more. So I kind of had to create that more. So in class, we used to have these notebooks, just like these cheap paper notebooks, like you'd have one for every subject. And we used to like keep the notebooks at the front of the class, which piles of them. And you just have to go up and grab one whenever your current notebook ran out of space. And I remember feeling guilty about this, like I was doing something wrong because all my notebooks still had space in them. But I remember walking up to the front of the class like nothing was the matter and taking one of those notebooks to write my Scooby-Doo story. And like it was a heist or something. Yeah, and it was a successful heist too. I was like tiptoeing in the front of the class because I took the notebook home and wrote my Scooby-Doo story in it. Like I'm trying to remember plot details of it, but it wasn't even like a mystery or anything. I think it was just one long scene of Scooby-Doo fighting it out with some giant bat demon, like Scooby-Doo just biting him and fighting it out like Scooby-Doo was some sort of vicious badass or something. It's wild, but that was my interpretation of what Scooby-Doo should do to his villains, just maul the fuck out of them. Anyways, yeah, that was the first time I remember intentionally creating something, and it was Scooby-Doo fanfiction. Next question. Who inspires you at the moment? A lot of people, to be honest. Like I mentioned in my intro, I'm an editor, so as a day job, I work for a publisher as an acquisition/developmental editor. The publisher I work for almost exclusively publishes romance books, like spicy, erotic romance books, which is wild because I never read a sexy billionaire story or a mafia romance before working here. But now the genre is ingrained into my brain now. That's not a bad thing. I mostly read horror on my own time, but like, I don't know, there's definitely overlap between the erotic and the horrific and the reader enjoyment out of the two, and I've come to really appreciate that. But yeah, the writers that we work with they're interesting because most of them are either pretty young, around their early 20s, or they're writers who write as a hobby and who never really considered having the work published before. So from one perspective, these are writers who are just starting out and learning, and yet there's such a brazenness to their work. Like as an editor, I've worked with writers over like a variety of reasons, helping their stories in a lot of different ways, but then you read their sex scenes that they write or moments of intense flirtation, and it's balls to the wall, zero shame, fuck cut to black, let the camera linger, bouts of eroticism. And it's magic. Like these writers do not pull their punches. They go all in. And whatever sexual chemistry, whatever response that they were hoping to elicit from their readers, it's all there on the page sizzling. And I can't tell you how much I respect and admire that. There's so many books out there where I felt like the writer played it safe or something. And not that every book or scene needs to go to a 10 because that's not true. But whenever I feel like a writer is pulling back or playing it safe, that always ruins the vibe for me. And even if the prose is gorgeous and the writing is beautiful, because then you get these writers who, from a craft perspective, may just be starting out, and yet they're brazen as fuck and taking their stories in exactly the direction that they need to go in, and they aren't flinching when it gets there. Just no shame, here I am, this is me, read my smut, and I love that. Like, because honestly, who doesn't have room to improve on their craft? That comes with time and practice and experience. But that brazenness, the fact that they already have that, and as strong as they do, that's so special. And I like to say I'm kind of like that in my own writing. I think I mostly am. But like I mentioned, I was raised Roman Catholic. I'm no longer practicing or religious or anything, but still, guilt and shame, that runs deep. So I don't know. I'd be lying if I said that when I'm writing, there hasn't been times when I've written a scene and I haven't hesitated, like, what are people going to think of me when they read this? Are people going to judge me? What will my friends think? Am I embarrassing myself? I don't know. Shame is real, especially when I first started out writing seriously. So I don't know. Seeing these writers do what needs to be done is so inspiring to me. And I also think that applies to the books that I'm reading as well, like the ones I enjoy reading on my own time. I'm currently reading Kathy Koja's Bad Brains, which is amazing. A few years ago, I read her first book, The Cipher, and I don't know, it might be my favorite horror book ever. Like, I know that's such a bold claim, but I can't think of a single other horror novel that made me feel the way that it did. And yeah, the prose is gorgeous. Kathy Koja goes on these stream of conscious ramblings that are whole vibes. Like, you'll be reading a page of anxiety-inducing ranting, and then she'll make a few words rhyme, and it's a bar. Like, she's not even writing anymore. She's just rapping. And it was as good as that is. It's not even why I love it. It's the character. Both the lead character in Bad Brains and The Cipher are pathetic drunks, and I want to call them simps. I don't even know if that's even a word that people still use anymore, but I guess that's what they are. They're these guys who, they've both hit rock bottom, and both these characters are like head over heels in love with women who wouldn't bat an eye if they were to roll over and die. And I feel like I've read versions of that story before, where the author has either played it for a laugh or pull their punch by having the other character finally see their value by the end of the story. But Kathy Koja is not interested in that. The entire book, we're meant to just sit in the toxicity of the relationship without any hope that anything will change, any hope that this other person will change. And it's just like 300 pages of stewing in this pathetic anxiety and unrequited love. And I love every fucking page of it because it never blinks. And you know what it also reminds me of too? Something I'm also reading right now and loving. I don't know how many anime fans are going to be listening to this, but it reminds me of Chainsaw Man, which I can almost hear the groans of people listening to this. Like I'm somehow committing sacrilege by comparing Kathy Koja to Tatsuki Fujimoto. But fuck you, that's what I'm doing. Ira said this was my episode, so I'm going to say whatever's on my mind. And you know what? Shout out Ira, man. So yeah, Chainsaw Man, this manga, right? So it's about another simp, basically. And like Kathy Koja's characters, he also is just madly pathetic and also head over heels in love with a woman who's not just using him, but not even shy in the fact that she's sexually manipulating him to get what she wants. And this all sounds like I'm admitting some kind of kink, but I swear, I just happen to be reading both of these things right now. And again, I'm just loving the brazenness of it all. But because Chainsaw Man does seem to reveal quite a bit of, okay, I'm not saying that when an author writes something or writes a character doing something, they believe it or endorse it. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that Chainsaw Man, as a piece of work, seems to wear its specific kinks on its sleeve. And Fujimoto must have known that, how that was going to look. He must have known that when he wrote it. Like, I've seen people online, the way people talk about the lead and talk about Fujimoto's own kinks bleeding into his work. And whether that's true or not, that's not actually what interests me. What interests me is that he was willing to go there and, like Kathy Koja, through the use of his super pathetic protagonist, through his simping or whatever, through all the kink and sexuality and violence, he never blinks, never pulls his punches. And because of that, both Koja and Fujimoto are able to tell as poignant a story as they do, which I don't think they would have been able to do had they been a bit more shy. So I don't know. I'm not saying that stories only work if you take them to the extreme. I'm just saying that stories sometimes have to go there. And when a writer is willing to take it there unabashedly, I eat that up. So I don't know. Go read Deciphering. Go read Chainsaw Man. Next question. What's your latest project? I just finished writing a horror romance novella, which I'm pitching as if Cronenberg wrote a disgusting rom-com while reading nothing but medieval alchemy and blasting the Velvet Underground and Nico. It's violent and disgusting and romantic. And you know what it is? I realize I've talked a lot about romance or relationships in fiction, but it's honestly because I love it in horror. I really do. I seriously think that there's nothing scarier than falling in love and being vulnerable and sharing all your bullshit and insecurities with another person. And I think relationships can lead to either really beautiful places or really horrible places. And I think horror is a great place where you can explore that. So yeah, next question. If money was no object, what would be your dream project? What I'm going to say isn't even that grand or anything, but I love comic books. Vertigo comics from the 90s are so ingrained into my soul, I think. Stuff like Hellblazer and Animal Man. Everyone loves Grant Morrison's Animal Man, but yo, if you haven't read Jamie Delano's run, please go read it. It's just so deeply weird and disturbing. But anyway, I can't draw for shit, and if I had all the money in the world, I would just pay a cool-ass illustrator what they deserve to do the artwork on some 90s Vertigo comic type story that I would write. That would honestly be my dream project. Next question. What do you do differently from other people? I feel like writers on podcasts are always quoting philosophers or something, and I'm a philosophy major, and I swear to God, gun to my head, I couldn't give you one quote from a philosopher. So I'm going to do Snoop Dogg instead. There was this one interview he did with 50 Cent and G-Unit, and he was discussing mumble rappers. He was saying how they all had the exact same flow, that triplet flow that was like, and he was making fun of it for sure. But then he says this. He was talking about like the importance of finding your own voice. And he says it's important because once you be you, who could be you but you? And that stuck with me. Honestly, I love that so much. So what do I do differently than other people? I'm just me. And by the very nature of being me, I do that differently than other people. Next question. What would you like your epitaph to say? I already told you, I can't die. I don't know. I honestly don't care or think about anything like that. I read somewhere once while Neil Gaiman was writing the Graveyard book, how every city he went to, he'd visit the local graveyard. And I remember thinking how cool that was. So I started doing it. And there's some beautiful graveyards out there. But there's also some ugly as fuck ones, some super depressing looking ones. And it was at one of those ugly ones that I realized how lame I was being, like how annoyed I'd be if I was buried in one of those ugly cemeteries. And then some kid starts stomping around all over my grave, walking up and down, just because Neil Gaiman told them that's what he did. I'd be so angry. But do you know what I would love? And it's illegal, so it would never happen. Or at least I think it's illegal. this is just a pipe dream, but for anyone eavesdropping, have you ever heard of a sky burial? It's this Tibetan funeral practice where your corpse is just abandoned on a mountaintop to be eaten by vultures and eagles. And I love that. There's something way more dignifying about your corpse just laying on some cliffside among the clouds with eagles picking your bones clean, where you'll never be discovered again, than rotting in some local cemetery so some Neil Gaiman fan can wander on through, stomp all over your crappy little path and feel like they're doing something profound. But it would never happen. I actually don't know if it's illegal or not, but I highly doubt any of my family members would ever drag my body up a mountain after I died. But actually, you know who would? Nah, not would. You know who should? The person who killed me in single combat would absolutely have to carry my body up a mountain. I'd feel like they'd have to. You know what? I feel like they'd want to. The person who kills me in single combat is absolutely the kind of person who would feel honor-bound to lug my freshly killed corpse up a mountain and abandon me on the edge of a cliff. I feel like I put up a good fight. I almost whooped them. They owe me this much. To anyone listening, if you're the person who eventually kills me in single combat, I'm telling you right now, it's your duty to give me a sky burial. It's the least you can do, you murderer. Anyway, that's it for me. This has been Not Worth Living. My name is Xavier Garcia. Thank you for eavesdropping. Shout out Ira.